The Super Ghost Kamikaze Attack was one of the last moves introduced in the original Dragon Ball story and late Dragon Ball Z by Toriyama, and one of the most creative, if you ask me. I've always been a big fan of this technique, and it's probably my favorite thing in the series involving Gotenks, and the fight with Gotenks and Majin Buu, I've always felt had a lot of comedy to it, but this technique was way more dangerous and was no laughing matter. And on this edition of the technique guide, we're going to go into the Super Ghost Kamikaze Attack because I love this move and I've been wanting to talk about it for a very long time. So let's talk about it. So even though the Super Ghost Kamikaze Attack did not win the poll in the community tab and Gogeta's Stardust Breaker did win, as I promised, I'm always going to deliver the other videos as well. Plus, this move is just so awesome and there's so many cool little factoids about this move. So when you watch this video here, you might actually learn something new about the Super Ghost Kamikaze Attack besides just us talking about how awesome it is. So let's get into it. The Super Ghost Kamikaze Attack was first used by Gotenks during the battle against Majin Buu. Gotenks, of course, being the fusion of Goten and Trunks, so presumably this technique was developed in the Room of Spirit and Time as Goten and Trunks practiced their fusion, either individually or together, came up with this move. So although Goten and Trunks were never these savage, bloodthirsty warriors that their fathers are when it comes to their thirst for combat and, challenging themselves, they still had that creative touch to make this technique, so we have to give them credit for it. The first time we saw this technique was Dragon Ball Chapter 490, which correlates to Dragon Ball Z, episode 258, if you are planning to watch these episodes. Now, we're going to go to the guidebooks for more information about what this technique is and how it works, but I'm also going to be explaining some even more interesting intricacies of this move. So the guidebook, specifically if you go to Daizenshu 2, page 217, or Daizenshu 4, page 112, thanks to Herms for this translation, by the way, it writes that the Super Ghost Kamikaze Attack is an offensive technique that he acquires during his training in the Room of Spirit and Time, which is, of course, the hyperbolic time chamber in the dub. And it says here, spitting out ectoplasm-shaped ki, Gotenks creates doppelgangers of himself. This ki possesses its own consciousness and can move on its own in obedience to Gotenks' orders. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. Gotenks called this ki a ghost. In general, this is a guided type ki manipulation technique, but it shows a completely unique evolution, and even Piccolo couldn't hide his surprise at this technique's unexpectedness and effect. This technique was created from Gotenks' childish ideas, but its force when it comes to actual fighting can be said to be that of considerably high-level technique. Now, that right there answers a lot of questions that people have had throughout the years about the Super Ghost, because some folks have said that they are magic-based, and some have said that they are being controlled by Gotenks telepathically, and there is truth to that, but they also have their own consciousness, and they are not a magic technique. This is pure energy that Gotenks somehow figured out. Keep in mind that Goku and Vegeta did not even figure out how to do something like this. This was Goten and Trunks together figuring this out, able to telepathically control to a degree their own energy, sort of creating their own life form. As trippy as it may sound, even though obviously ghosts are not alive, this is not really a ghost. It's just a ghost in name. It resembles a ghost. And of course, if you get touched by this ghost, or if the ghost touches you, it explodes and causes major, major damage. I would hate to use this comparison, but it really does come off like a technique that's resembling a kamikaze. I mean, I hate to say that, but that's kind of what it is, And one thing that I've always found interesting is that Goten and Trunks individually presumably can't do this move. Now, I can't say that for sure because just because we haven't seen Goten and Trunks do the move individually does not mean they don't know how to do it. But I feel like because of the power of the fusion of Gotenks and their fused minds, that's what creates this move. So we still don't know if they know how to do it individually. Presumably not, but we don't know for certain. And because of that, I'm not going to say one way or another. But you have to remember, these are children and they have enough brain capacity to be able to control another organism or another part of energy, another consciousness, so to speak. And that's pretty impressive. Now, there is an upgraded version of this move called the Super Ghost Kamikaze Attack 10 Ghost Finish. And then we have, of course, the Majin Buu version, which I'll get to here in a second. But chapter 491, it says in the guidebooks, this is a strengthened version of the Super Ghost Kamikaze Attack. With this version, he puts out 10 ghosts and they all consecutively attack the opponent. Of course, each ghost has its own consciousness. So think about that. Gotenks can mind control multiple different ghosts, but also they have their own orders that were given upon its creation, sort of like programming. When you break it down, dude, this is a pretty advanced move, yo. Think about what I'm telling you right now. When I was a kid watching DBZ, I never thought about this deeply, but it's pretty damn deep. So Majin Buu saw through the attack, and because of that, Gotenks had to use a petty method, according to what the guidebooks say, where he tried to entice Majin Buu. Now, it says here in the guidebooks also that these ghosts are scatterbrained, perhaps because they have personalities similar to Gotenks, aka immaturity, being a kid. But after consulting with Gotenks, two of them, happy over their perfect strategy, forget themselves and grip their hands together, causing them to self-destruct. So what I find interesting about that is that it shows that there are limitations to how much programming Gotenks can give these guys. They are, sentient to a degree beings. They do have a mind of their own. They can be controlled by Gotenks, but they still don't always obey orders, or sometimes they just kind of do whatever they want because they're not thinking properly, if you could even call it that. So it's really weird, and it only works in Dragon Ball. And you have to also remember that Toriyama at this point in the series was just going back to his gag manga roots. So it's best not to think too deeply into this, even though I have been doing that here for this video, because what we do in these technique guides. But it is something to where, from my summation, Gotenks sort of creates this pre-programmed ghost and can control them to a degree, but they still have a mind of their own as well. So it's balanced depending on whatever the plot sort of wants you to do, if that makes sense. Now, there is another move that Gotenks did called the Balloon Flash Bomber, which is an interesting variation of this move because it says in the guidebooks a powerful technique where the offensive and destructive power of the ghost from the Super Ghost Kamikaze Attack are increased. And the effects of this technique are severe, and Gotenks used to temporarily reduce Buu's body to ribbons. Now, this variation of the move appears to be anime only. Dragon Ball Z episode 261 is the source of it. If you remember, he does that big explosion, then the ghosts kind of come out. So probably the strongest version of this move, other than the Majin Buu version, which is the Super Buu Kamikaze Attack. Now, this technique debuts when Buuhan, which is Majin Buu absorbing Goten, Trunks, Piccolo, and Gohan with his ultimate power, battles Vegito. But this one takes it up to a new level because not only are Majin Buu's ghosts that he got from Gotenks, not only are they similar, but also these ghosts can manipulate energy and do their own techniques. So we have Buu's ghosts doing Kamehamehas and whatever energy techniques Majin Buu just happens to know. Now, presumably, and this is just a theory, because Majin Buu has the brain of Goten, Trunks, Gohan, and Piccolo, I feel like this technique may have been a hybrid of Gotenks and Piccolo, because Piccolo is the smartest fighter out of those four guys, has the most experience, developed the most unique techniques, and I feel like the idea of sort of pre-programming Majin Buu's ghost to have the ability and the knowledge to create ki and to manipulate ki is something that Piccolo would have kind of instilled into Buu. But again, I can't say that for certain, but either way, it's unbelievably advanced because these things now can fire ki blasts. But against an opponent like Vegito, who is, as we talked about in my Strongest in Dragon Ball Vegito video, Majin Buu had no chance here, and even Vegito laughs this technique off as being a technique invented by kids. So it's crazy that we're spending this video putting over how amazing this move is, which it is, and Vegito just says, well, it's a kid's move. And to me, that's all played up for laughs. We're not supposed to take it too seriously, but it's awesome because Vegito was so powerful that he was not so easily impressed by this technique. But I'm not Vegito. And I am, and I love Super Ghost Kamikaze Attack. It's one of my favorite moves in Dragon Ball, and really super creative technique, and one that makes you think a little bit. You know what I'm saying? That's why this technique guide has been so fun to make. So I hope you really enjoyed this video, and I look forward to making more of these for as long as I can because we have a lot of techniques to cover, but it was fun doing it. And let me know what you think about the Super Ghost Kamikaze Attack. And if you enjoyed this video, check these out as well. And I thank you.